Hello and welcome to Japan Expert Insights and our Wednesday morning room with Tim Sullivan and me, Maya Matsuoka, as your hosts and moderators. In this podcast, we welcome comments, questions and opinions. So if you haven't done so yet, join us next time on Clubhouse. In the meantime, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel, where we upload all the conversations on Japanese politics, business insights, and Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region. It's 8 o'clock. Good morning, Debbie. Good morning, Dominic. Good morning, everybody who is here. Today we have, two very special guests, as you already know. And, they have been working in Japan for about 30 years or more than that. But the thing is that they collectively run one of the best-known marketing research agencies here in Japan. So their names are Dominic Carter and Debbie Howard of the Carter Group, Japan Market Resource Network. So today we're going to talk about age tech. You know that this is an exciting market. It's growing all over the world, but Japan actually is the country that is a market leader in this industry. And we have some very important, very good insights from both Dominic and Carter. We're going to hear them today. Of course, there are a lot of things to talk about. We are not sure that we can cover all of them, but I know that Debbie and Dom are going to do their best to let us know. So, Debbie, shall we start with you first?
Thanks so much, Maya. Yes, I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what's going on in the market in Japan related to age tech and tell you a little bit about our white paper, and we'll post some links in the chat as we go through. But thank you, everyone, for being here today. Dominic and I are really happy to be here. So just want to mention a little bit about Japan and what's happening with aging in Japan. I think most people in this room will know that, by the year 2050, we're going to have 40% of the total population being age 65 or more in Japan. And that is at 30% right now. So it's really high. And when we think about comparing that to the rest of the world, for example, the next highest or most aged society would be Italy at 23% of the population being 65 plus. So it's quite advanced in Japan, and compared to the U.S., that's about 17% of the population at 65 plus. So what this means is that what we think it means, Dominic and I, is that Japan is the world's real-time laboratory for what we call age tech products and services, and we're going to talk a little bit about those today because it's a huge sector, and there are opportunities for many different kinds of businesses. Almost every kind of business can find a way to look at the aging of Japan and look at the age tech sector and find a way to participate. The size of the market is huge. The current age tech market size right now in Japan is nearly equivalent to what we have in the United States. So it's a huge market concentrated on this tiny island. And I should say this tiny island that we all love because it is so fascinating in so many ways. We see some really interesting things that are typical of Japanese seniors. We have incorporated those in our white paper called The World's Real-Time Laboratory for Age Tech that came out in midsummer of 2021, and I will post a link to that while Dom's talking later in this hour in the chat so that you have that. Japanese, I'm just going to go through a few reasons why we at the Carter Group, Japan Market Resource Network, like to call Japan the world's real-time laboratory for age tech. So the market size for the aging care market in Japan is expected to be $954 billion by 2025. And again, that is nearly equivalent to what we're experiencing in the U.S. right now. So the U.S. is a huge market for this, and to think that Japan's is currently that big or nearly that big is a really interesting concept. Obviously, Japan enjoys one of the longest lifespans of any country, and it also enjoys quality of life. It's not just about getting older. It's about living well and enjoying those last 10 to 20 years in a healthy way. We also have in Japan, different to Western countries, a reverence and respect for the aged. So we have a society that I believe exhibits less ageism than we see, for example, in the United States, and perhaps Europe is somewhere in the middle, but certainly in America, it's a youth-oriented culture, and you really feel that. I've been living there because of COVID for the last 3 years and full-time, and it was a real shock for me to live in Japan for 30 years and then go back to the States and experience what I actually see as ageism. And I can say that being 68. So, now, Japan has also done a wonderful job with education and awareness building of what it takes to have high quality of life with aging. And that results in individuals actually being very self-responsible and accountable and preventive in the way that they look at their own healthcare management. So we will see, by comparison, for example, in the States, we will see a lot more lifestyle diseases, obesity, diabetes, heart disease. We will see higher incidences of those in the U.S. compared to Japan. So we have Japanese people of 65 plus, and really, I would say even we could go even lower, like in the 40s and 50s, we will see much more proactivity in terms of getting regular exercise and making sure we're taking classes, also cognitive brain games and things like that. So Japanese aging adults are very aware of the need for not only physical activity, but mental activity and sociability, because isolation and loneliness are issues that really crop up whenever we talk about aging. So Japanese people are actually quite aware of the need for all of these things in terms of creating healthy lifestyles and that greater quality of life as we age. So we've got a populace who are more physically active for longer. We've got a higher quality of life in terms of physical and mental health. We've got active engagement in learning new skills with hobbies and sports and adult learning. We're seeing quite a bit of that as in the 65 plus population. And importantly, from a marketing viewpoint, we see higher purchasing power among older adults compared with their younger counterparts. And I think that's a really important point, because sometimes I think there's an impression that maybe older adults are not buying as much, but actually the numbers are very, very high. The household income and savings, the savings in particular, is double that of those in the younger age groups. So we've got people who actually have time and money. And that's a very unusual and wonderful combination to have when we're talking about marketing products. And when we talk about active seniors or active older adults, of course, we get into this market of age tech. And age tech is really anything technological that can help aging adults as they go through their lives and help them to live more independently for longer in their homes, and also increase that physical, the cognitive health, and the sociability. So we have identified in our Age Tech white paper 5 areas of needs for products and services. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples for each of these. One area naturally would be medical. Another area is what we call lifestyle, which includes mobility, safety, and learning. And a third area is social and communications, which I've mentioned. A fourth area is health and wellness. And a fifth area is financial. So let me give you just a couple of examples for each of these 5 areas. And I'd just like to preface this conversation about age tech products and services by saying that, the goal in our world should be to make products and services that meet everyone's needs. We shouldn't have like products for older people and products for younger people, although that naturally happens as we do segmentation and product and service development. But in essence, when we get into technical products and digital products, we should be looking for ways that products and services can meet everyone's needs. And then, of course, maybe there will be some edges around which we can segment by age or gender or whichever other ways we want to segment. So when we look at these product examples, let's look at medical first. And probably some of you have seen the picture of HAL, H-A-L. Again, I'm going to put a copy of our white paper, a link to download that in the chat as we go through this meeting. And you could see pictures of all of these in that white paper. But HAL is the exoskeleton suit that you can put on, and it gives you a lot more strength for mobility, for example, for walking or for reaching and grabbing something and picking up something heavy. Right now, the applications are mainly in assisted living and hospital settings, but there will be a day when normal people can have an exoskeleton suit, and it will be fashionable as well. So that's a really interesting example of a medical application of age tech. But there are all kinds of other things. There are little robotics that can help around assisted living facilities. There are monitoring systems that you can have in your house that help with fall detection, for example, or to track things like how many times you go to the restroom at night. If we see abnormal behavior in that sort of area, we might, for example, be tipped off that the care receiver has, or the aging adult has a urinary tract infection, for example. And that would help us as caregivers and as a care team and as family members to keep that person safe and prevent things from getting worse than they are. So that's the medical area, big area, lots of different applications in there, as you can imagine. And then in the area of lifestyle, which includes mobility, safety, and learning, we have all kinds of examples of, for example, exercising the legs to keep them strong and help promote balance so that we don't have as much gait disturbance among aging populations, because as people age and they lose the strength and balance ability, the risk for falls grows. And that's huge. If we can prevent falls, that is a big thing that we can do with age tech to help our aging population to be healthier longer, because we all know that in the world, 50% of the emergency situations for older people are as a result of falls, and it can ruin the life of an older person forever, because once you fall and break a hip, you start becoming much more frail, you can't move as much, and it's a real challenge. So preventing the falls in the first place is critical. And a lot of the mobility type age tech that we're seeing is age tech that can help you improve your balance and your gait. There are great things that can help us see with an older person when they are starting to break down. And that's when a rehabilitation specialist can step in and help that with improvement with age tech products, and other analog products as well, to tell the truth. I mean, there are many solutions to all of these areas. And then when we have social and communications, of course, staying connected and being engaged and having purpose in life is so important to that quality of life we're talking about. We have Nintendo's brain training game. We have a little robot called Paro, and lots of other ways for people to stay connected. One of the examples that we are highlighting in our Age Tech event that comes up on October 26th, and that's here in Tokyo, and I'll put a link to that in the chat as well, is a company called Sail, S-A-I-L, and Maya kindly introduced us to Manobu Goto, who is the young startup head and founder of this company. And what Sail does is it creates channels for older adults in Japan to communicate with people of all ages around the world. And of course, most of this is done in English, but some of it's done in Japanese. If there's somebody in Europe who wants to practice their Japanese and they find a friend through Sail, they can do that. It's a great way for people to be able to, again, stay connected, feel engaged, and feel that purpose in their lives. And then under health and wellness, we have, of course, cognitive care, emotional, psychological, and physical opportunities to use age tech products. One that I love is the IU shower. That's in our white paper as an example. It is basically a shower machine that allows users to safely and easily take a shower. And you can imagine as people age, getting in and out of tubs is dangerous. So something like an IU shower can help you have the pleasure of bathing and the necessity of bathing from a health viewpoint without the dangers. There's also different connection apps and really all kinds of things here. I would say even something as simple as WhatsApp or Line can be considered to be health and wellness. It's a channel through which health and wellness can be delivered. So in that sense, it can have an age tech application. And then when we get into the financial area, we've got financial management on a daily basis, so paying the bills and managing your finances. We can move on into end-of-life planning with that. And some of the banks, MUFJ has a Tsukaete Anshin system that helps you with those financial management all the way through to end-of-life planning, including fraud prevention. Fraud prevention and scam prevention is very, very important when we talk about fintech, financial technologies. There's also Everplans, which is a software coming into Japan through NTT Data. So there's lots of crossover. When we do our product and service matrix in the white paper, you'll see that 1/3 to a half of these products actually tick the boxes in 2 or more of the needs areas. And we fully expect this convergence of products and services going forward so that more features and benefits are offered within one platform. Because we all know we don't want like 5 different devices and 5 different pieces of software. So we can absolutely expect convergence in terms of what is being offered through the age tech products. So Maya, that's pretty much what I had to talk about as the setup for drilling down a little deeper, and Dom's going to go into that. I just want to mention one really interesting article that came out last week from the World Economic Forum, and this segues right into Dom's part, and that is the World Happiness Index. And the World Happiness Index is a very long-term study from back in the 1940s, conducted by the United Nations and WHO, and it says that Japanese are the least happy people in the world. And I actually took a little bit of issue in that when I covered the article, and Dom and I have discussed this, and Dom has some really good observations about why that might have happened in the data and what are some of the things that we have found in our over 5 years of tracking 1,000 Japanese every year, a national study that we do. So we do have some observations about the differences between young and old and that sort of thing. So I just wanted to mention those things. And if there are any questions, Maya, we can let people ask questions now and then move to Dom, however you would like to do it. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, I saw that article by the World Economic Forum, and I thought it's really strange because all the, let's say, people around me who are 65 and over, they look happy. They are enjoying their lives.
Exactly. I'm blown away by that, having not been in Japan for 3 years, just seeing that here. And my head really jerked when I read that article.
Can I jump in here too?
Yes, Dominic, please do.
I think you'll find the issues with younger people in Japan. It's not with older people if there's an issue with happiness.
Yes, indeed. So I just wonder how they did the survey because, obviously it looks like they surveyed mostly people in younger age brackets. So that's kind of strange to me because surveys usually should be they should be done without excluding any age groups.
That's right, Maya. Don't you think we have a problem that people publish? I mean, and again, I don't know what I couldn't tell from the article, Debbie, what the age groups were.
Me neither, Dom. And I've got the entire report to put in the chat. But yeah, I want to drill down in that. But I'm really quite interested in that. I think it must have skewed younger.
But let's say we have a problem if we treat people over a certain age as if they're non-people. In these sorts of surveys, right? So if it stops at 70 or if it stops at 60 or, and often in work that we've done over the years, the survey will stop at age 49. So, there's an issue in itself that we don't actually value the opinions of people who are older. And I'm not accusing WEF of doing this because, as I say, I don't have the details on it. But I'm telling you, it is very common that we have like these really hard cutoffs at age 60 or, 70 if we're really daring. But if you look at the structure of the population, that doesn't make any sense that we would be doing that.
Absolutely.
Absolutely, yes. Well, but since today's topic is the people over 65 and the technology that is going to improve the quality of their life, also quality of their, not just life, everyday life, and their cognitive health, their physical health. So let's go back to it. And Dom, so just let's talk about, about the aging people in Japan and how they are the happiest here.
Yes, well, I think it's kind of, I think there are a couple of there's just a little bit of a point I'd like to pick up from what Debbie was saying on just the size of the age tech market, because the way that we think about it is kind of as a niche at the moment, but it's really not a niche. If you've got 30% of the population over 65, and that proportion is only going to increase, how can we say that this is a niche? Like this is a mainstream issue, and it's something that we really need to get right. And it's sort of critical that in that process we actually really look at the user's view of their needs, so that we actually really get to know people who are older and what their needs are in their own eyes, because our view of what needs fixing can occasionally be kind of a little bit heavy-handed. And I've had that issue even in my own family, where I really tried to force my parents to use a smart speaker because it seemed like such an obvious solution for them, but sort of never really worked. But I think we have a problem from the start when we think that aging is something that needs to be fixed. In this country, very much 65 is actually not old, and of course there are many people around the world who don't think 65 is old, but this is definitely not the case in Japan. So you'll find that when we talk about caregivers and care receivers, in many cases the caregivers are in their 70s for people for their parents who are in their 90s. So when you think about that, it's kind of easy to understand, because we've been quite surprised in the work that we've done, where people really resist the idea of being a care receiver, and being cast in that mold. And a lot of people sort of are resistant to the idea that they need support, even when it's obvious that they do. So I think that there are some issues with the way that we position solutioning in this area, with the view what we think needs to be done, and the view of what the user needs to be done, and the way that we need to align with people to get them to adopt products which are obviously going to be beneficial for them. Happiness is actually part of this equation, which is like really, really very interesting when you think about it. But we've seen this come up in a number of different projects that we've done, and I'm pretty confident that it's an important element in the mix. But just on that point where I was criticising the age cutoffs in many surveys, and of course we've been guilty of that ourselves. But recently, back in April of this year, we did a survey, and we did it until 89 years old. So this was actually the oldest quantitative survey that we've done at the Carter Group. It's really the broadest sample there. What we found was like super, super interesting, in that the happiest cohorts in the population were in their 70s and 80s. So, we found that there was really quite a big difference between younger people and older people. And in some respects, younger people show some signs of crisis almost, which is a completely different topic. But what's happening with younger people in Japan, I think, also requires a lot of information, a lot of focus. But nevertheless, what we found is that actually there's a bit of it looks like a little mini crisis for people in their 50s, and then when people make it through their 50s into their 60s and 70s and 80s, then they're actually quite happy, which maybe we oughtn't to be surprised about that, but that's what we see. In terms of helping to explain that finding, we asked people, if they had a role at or outside of home, and 3/4 of people in their 80s said, yes, I do have a role at or outside of the home. And as opposed to people who are teenagers in our survey, and that number was 38%, so 2 in 5. So you've got, basically basically double the proportion of people in their 80s saying they have a role. They feel useful. And of course, I guess those that make it to that age also, probably have that sense, and that sense has probably helped them through to get there. And of course, people who are aging tend to value their increasing limited options more highly, I guess. But so it's great to have this positive mental disposition that many aging people have is something that we can really work with. The positive mental attitude that a lot of people show does, however, need, all the help it can get, basically, because it's like a virtuous cycle. It's like, I'm happy, so I want to have things that will assist me to age well. And because I'm getting that assistance, I'm happy. And it is a really nice virtuous circle in that respect. Whereas people who are more negative tend to sort of deny it, and then they spiral down. So the in terms of if we look at the total population, we look at, okay, well, so who's really enthusiastic about age tech in older groups? It's about 10% of elderly people. About 50% are very open to the idea, but 10% we could say are like really enthusiastic about it. And they really fall into this kind of active, socially and community engaged group, and also very proactive about the aging process itself. So the people are sort of really active and like really leaning into aging, as you can imagine. These enthusiasts they're naturally enthusiastic about everything. So, you can imagine them. I've got this picture of these people, being the first ones to get a car phone. Back in the 80s, I guess maybe they were a bit wealthier if they were in that group as well. But they're the type of people who really have been into new stuff and technology all of their lives. And of course, Japan has a lot of people like that. These enthusiasts, they really have a sense of accomplishment and mission. 2/3 of them feel that they've accomplished something in their lives. And 3/4 of them feel that they have something that they still want to do. So they're still, even at their advanced age, they're still looking forward. And I think Debbie's point about the exoskeleton is like, really kind of like a really apt point. Like that kind of, they're the type of people that will say, "Yep, I want the exoskeleton, but I don't want it to look ugly." And it's almost like, they're leaning into this idea. Yep, we really love the idea that we've got this exoskeleton that can help us, but it's also part of your proud face to the world. So it's not like you're, out and about on crutches or something. This is something that actually becomes part of your mode of self-expression. And when you're doing that, that's kind of, to me, that's like age tech done right. That people want to use it. They want to actually, they're proud of it. Like they're really leaning into it, and it becomes part of who they are. So again, I think that intersection of happiness and technology is very important, and we need to, in order to be successful with doing age tech, I think that we need to really find those enthusiast people in the population and work with them, because these enthusiasts have the ability to positively influence other people as well, and we need to be clear-eyed about it, that there are issues in the user group in terms of their ability to easily work with tech. So I think having people who are going there first and showing the way, I think is very important. So if we think of this idea of ikigai, which I guess in its simplest definition, my understanding is that having that reason to get up in the morning, if we work with those very high ikigai people in age tech and actually partner with them on developing the concepts, then we've got a really much higher chance than just sort of being sort of in the lab and trying to work out what we think the physical problem is that we want to solve. But again, not having that real sort of look in as to like why people will want to use tech as they age. So I think that we've got an opportunity to create really good partnership with the users themselves, and definitely want to sort of go after those users that have that very high ikigai, enthusiastic type of profile in their personalities. So they're the basic points I wanted to make about happiness. But I do believe that this idea of ikigai and happiness in age tech is very strongly connected, both in terms of the type of people who will pick it up, but also the type of people that we should be actually working with very closely to develop it.
Yes, definitely, Dom, and thank you for that. I also think that, ikigai and happiness are very closely connected with mental health, and we often tend to think about, older people having physical difficulties, let's say, to move around or so on. But at the same time, it's not only the physical aspect of aging happily. There is that aspect of feeling safe in your mind and being at peace of mind, actually. And I think that, as you said, there is a lot that age tech can do there as well. And yes, Debbie, you mentioned that one of the panelists at the conference next week will be Manabu Goto. But how about the other panelists? Can you tell us a little bit about the themes you're going to talk about at that point?
Sure. Thanks so much, Maya. We have some fantastic panelists from Japanese academia and government, and I'll tell you a few of those. Let me tell you some of our showcase examples first, and then I don't want to misspeak with any of these names, so I'm going to look for a document while I'm trying to talk. So we'll see how that works. But in addition to SAIL, which is Manabu Goto's company, we have several other really interesting showcase examples that we will be highlighting at the Age Tech event on October 26th. I put the registration link in the chat for everyone. And please note that you must register for in-person attendance or to gain access to the replay links that we will be sharing with you on YouTube afterwards. So please go ahead and sign up. Even if you cannot come in person, please sign up to gain access to the replay links. And we would also love it if you're interested in age tech, if you would join our community. There's no charge, and we are trying to create a multidisciplinary community that will supercharge the uptake and adaptation of age tech in Japan. A couple of the other examples are a company called Hippo Camera, HIPPO, and this is a University of Toronto, Canada project that has, again, public and private sector involvement in its development. It's been under development for several years, and what it can do is help us to capture our memories and understand when our memories are starting to decline. So there's a preventative aspect to it from the dementia and Alzheimer's viewpoint, but there's also the opportunity to capture memories before they are lost forever. And so Hippo Camera is a really interesting technology that can be fit into other platforms as an aspect of those other platforms. And we've also be highlighting a company that some of you may have heard of, Intuition Robotics. They've got a fabulous artificial intelligence robot called ELLI, E-L-L-I with a big Q. It's a very cute little robot that will help older adults in their homes from a communications and sociability companionship viewpoint, but it also has some prevention and monitoring aspects as well. And they've done all of we are so lucky, Dominic and I, to have worked with most of our showcase companies, including Intuition Robotics, on their initial research in the Japanese market with users, which is so very important. They are in a large-scale trial in New York State right now in over 1,000 homes with ELLI. So we expect they'll be coming back to Japan after they get some of the further development done in the U.S. And then we also are highlighting Toyota Research Institute. Toyota is a fascinating company for so many reasons, with autonomous driving, and I think there's a woven city of the future here in Japan, and just all kinds of great work. They also have operations in the United States, in California and Massachusetts, where they are developing the in-home robotics for the future. And these are robots that can help with everything from chopping vegetables to taking out the trash, ordering your groceries, communication systems in the home that will allow an older adult to look at a large screen and communicate with their family members and their grandchildren. Just fabulous technology and wonderful things in development right now today that I believe will be in our homes within 10 years. So those are our showcase companies. And then I wanted to just tell you about a few of our panelists. And I'm having trouble finding this. Let me let Dom say a few words while I look for this document, and then I can come back and tell you about the Japanese academia and government folks that we have joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Debbie. I also wanted to add that there are a couple of startups that we're working with in a fairly profound way, and the founders of these startups are going to be speaking as well. So our first is a lady called Tiziana Alampresi, who a lot of people in Tokyo know. She was marketing director at Fiat for many years, and she has conceived a startup called La Camera della Felicità, which is a very, 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 very interesting idea that centers around the collection and curation of memories that can then be played back to people. In some cases, at the very end of their lives, and she has a very interesting story and concept around that, and she's going to be sharing that with the audience, and we're working closely with Tiziana on developing that idea. The second startup we're working with is called CareMates, and this is led by a fellow called Alan Raby, who we've also been working with for a few years. And CareMates is a matching app of people that want to procure services that have to do with the demands as we age, and people who are providing those services. And Alan's going to explain what he's working on. He also has a gentleman from Persona who will be speaking as well as one of their investors, and a couple of lawyers also he's going to have up on the stage with him as well to talk about some of the issues that one might face when trying to launch a startup in the area. And we're helping Alan with a reasonable size scale trial in November of his service in Tokyo. So they're two people who I think are very interesting. Debbie, do you have the panelists in front of you?
I do. Thank you. That was perfect. And yes, we are so excited about this event because of all those companies that we've just told you about, who are great examples of startups in the space, in the age tech space. And again, we are so lucky to work with such fantastic companies in this wonderful area of product and service development. So on our panel, where we have 5 experts in the space discussing the overall age tech arena in Japan and how we can work together to collaborate and make a better ecosystem for startups. We have some amazing folks joining us. We have Mr. Osamu Kobayashi. He is director of the Department of International Affairs for Japan Science and Technology Agency, otherwise known as JST. Some of you may have heard of that. He understands the Japanese government agenda and has international perspectives on how this can work and how it does work and can work. And we're very interested to hear his perspectives, along with Dr. Ryuta Kawashima, who is a very well-known person in this space. He's the director of the Smart Aging International Research Center for the Institute of Development, Aging and Cancer, or IDAC, for Tohoku University. And he is a prize winner of Science and Technology and the Commendation for Science and Technology by the Ministry of Education, Culture, Sports, Science and Technology. Now you know why I needed my notes.
Son, I just want to add, is also very famous for having worked with Nintendo on brain training.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, so some of his work, I think it's about 10 years ago, really wildly popular on the Nintendo DS platform. So, he's really well, as you say, Debbie, this guy is really, really well known in this area and actually very successful.
Yes, thank you for bringing that up, Tom. And he really is a great example of where a real scientist meets real applications. That's pretty rare to find. So we're very excited about having Kawashima-san with us. And then Dr. Akiko Kishi Svensson. She is the Chief Medical Officer of MedMirai. That is a startup company funded by the University of Tokyo, and it aims to accelerate research results into the healthcare and medical services arena. So she will be able to talk about, what does it take for to be at the forefront of creating a new business with cutting-edge technology from her personal perspective, and also combining business and academia. And then we have, I have two more. Dr. Hiroyuki Suzuki, who is the Executive Vice President and Representative Director for the Advanced Telecommunications Research Institute International, known as ATR. And he's also President and CEO of Exporter Innovations, and leading the establishment of a global innovation ecosystem in Keihana Science City. He is, of course, very well experienced in this area, including an international perspective, and that's very important to Dominic and I in this area, in this whole event. We want to promote international collaboration here, focused on Japan, of course, bringing up domestic startups as well as bringing in startups from the rest of the world. So these people are the ones who can really help us all to understand how to nurture this into better existence in Japan. And then last but not least, we have Mr. Takeshi Haeno. He's a partner in healthcare strategy for Deloitte Tohmatsu Consulting. And Haeno-san also has fantastic private and public sector experience in the pharma, medtech, and health IT and insurance industries. He has worked with government, hospitals, and long-term care services, and we are just very, very fortunate to have him join us as well. So, Maya, those are the level of people that we have speaking at this event. And again, I really encourage all of you to, if you can join us in person, we would love to have you, of course. That's October 26th, next Wednesday, from 10 to 1 at Tokyo American Club. It is a complimentary event. The Carter Group we believe in this area, and we are willing to invest in this area because we believe so strongly in it. And you can attend live, or you can register for access to the replay links. Again, the link is in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Yes, I do encourage you, just as Debbie did, to register for the event. It is a very impressive lineup of speakers, specialists, and I'm sure that everybody can learn a lot about age tech and social trends here in Japan because, well, like it or not, the Japanese society is aging, and it is also a huge market. And there are a lot of opportunities right there. Well, so I wonder if there are any questions from the audience at the moment. Elizabeth, thank you very much for your comments about increasing the age for retirement in the United States. I believe that, that's something the government of the United States needs to think about. And it has happened actually here in Japan. Well, there are no policies of increasing the retirement age, but the government is currently encouraging companies to hire people over 65 or even not retire them. So there are different ways of dealing with the problem, and I believe that a lot of different countries have different solutions for it. And I invite everybody, if you have a question, if you are in a situation that allows you to speak, please join us here on stage. We have about 9 more minutes for questions and answers, or 8 anyway.
Yeah, I would like to, I'm not sure if there's a question in this, but just anecdotally, I'm part of the demographic. I'm 64. I'll be 65 next February. Most of my friends are pushing 70. As I put in the comments, they're all very active. They don't act like they're 70. They all wear blue jeans, and they're in rock and roll bands. They surf. And they seem genuinely really happy. And some of them were artists and musicians their whole life. So, the transition probably wasn't dramatic. But some of them worked, in an oppressive setting as salarymen for 40 years. And I think they're much happier not being in that pressure cooker anymore. And many of them are embracing this new life. Again, they go camping. Most of them are really into music. So they seem young and happy to me. Now, to use an extreme example, as I've mentioned to everyone here on stage, certainly, my mother-in-law is 91 years old. Completely different needs for her, completely different outlook on the world. And you talk about whether we should call it a niche. That's a really good, question to pose. But even if it was a niche, it affects my niche and it affects many other people's niche. So that age tech, of course, has to keep the needs of the elderly in mind, but the people providing the care can also benefit from it. So in that sense, or it could be to the detriment of us, right, if it isn't developed. So there's age segmentation just in my little anecdotal world. And I was going to ask Dominic or Debbie, any thoughts on that? Or, just...
I take that. Debbie's written 2 books on caregiving. So, Debbie, I think you should...
Well, thanks, Tim, and it's really interesting the way that you put that. Whether we call it a niche or not, that niche is impacting your niche, and it's really interesting because one of the things that we do at the Carter Group is to obviously involve users in the product and service development, and we always involve what we call caregivers and care receivers. I mean, sometimes, as Dom said, we have some difficulty with people actually self-identifying as caregivers or even care receivers, because some people who are 85 and 90, I have heard them say, no, I don't need any help. But actually, their adult daughter, is coming over there every 2 days, bringing them groceries. But they don't define it as, let's say, caregiving. So that's one side that one point we can just put aside, whether people call themselves that or not. The roles are very much in place. So we always want to consider the lifestyle and the living circumstances of the aging adult, and of course how independent they can be in all of these different areas of life and how much help they need, because we know that people need more help as they age. They need more help with everything. And now we're to this question of technology, Tim. So how can technology help any of us in our daily lives, whether we're old or not? And then how can technology help us as an aging adult if we can make the devices and the software work? If there's an adult daughter or a grandson or granddaughter who can help the older person understand how to use the technology, that's often what we hear about, that a caregiver is actually charged with making that software or that device work. And trying to get the older person to use it is a whole other thing. Dom's got a great story about his parents who won't use the Alexa thing. And no matter what Dom does to show them how to do it, they just don't want to use it. And my significant other actually has a story from way long ago when he bought his parents a microwave, and the biggest use for the microwave was they took it out of the box and they planted tomatoes in the box, and that was the biggest use of the microwave. So we have this problem with uptake and adaptation. And it is something, Tim, that we have to think about with all of these products. And that's why it's so important to involve users, actual users, who's going to use the device or the software or the app or whatever it is, who's going to use it and how are they going to use it? And is it easy for them to get onboarded? We have talked with some of our Japanese users about how, they are pretty game. The active adults, the 10% Dom talked about, who are into it, they are open-minded to having more technology in their lives, but they do have naturally some concerns about getting on and not feeling foolish or, like feeling like a dummy that they can't make it work. And so users need to think about how can we make that process easier for older adults and for their caregivers. Because, of course, if people can't use it, it's no good. So we always are talking about involving the different types of users and different age groups in the development process for the products. So from the very beginning. We don't want 20-year-olds creating technology for 70-year-olds with no idea of how hard it is for a 70-year-old to figure that out. Even myself at 68, and I'm pretty game with all of this stuff, but I don't want to go online. I want a real person to help me get onboarded. And so it starts with the development and building these features in that people actually want and can easily get onboarded with, and then it goes all the way through to instruction manuals and having printed material, for example, rather than making an older person go online to figure it out. I mean, that's easy for a 20 or 30-year-old, but it's not so easy for somebody who's a little older. They might want a printed booklet. That would be an easy solution for many, many companies to provide. Tim, I went all over the place with that answer, but wonder if that helped?
Yes, yeah, and it makes sense. I guess, like to back up your statement about the difficulty of it. Like, again, my mother-in-law doesn't even have a concept of what the internet means, much less use it, and she'll never get it. So getting her, for example, to use an iPad, even if we set up YouTube and say, just press this button and you can hear your favorite, Enka song, she just doesn't, she blocks it out, right?
Right. Well, let me tell you about another really interesting startup that we know about. It's called Chikaku, and it's actually, they've taken this problem of what an older person will actually do or want to do, and they've taken the interface of the remote control from the TV that the person uses every day and turned that into the guidance system for, let's say, communicating with your grandkids over your TV set. So you're using your TV set that you already have and your remote control, and the way they've engineered it is it's very, very cool. You literally plug in two things. It's very black boxish, but it's not hard to install. We would be able to help our parents to install it, and they would be able to operate it pretty easily. So I think that we definitely will be seeing more of these types of things. Does that help?
Yeah, no, really. You have to trick them into, using it by anchoring it to something familiar, a TV. And, we show movies of my granddaughter to my mother-in-law. We hold the iPad in front of her, and as long as we press play, she's happy to look at it. But I wanted to sneak in one more quick comment. Again, this is all anecdotal, but all my friends, around 70, Japanese friends, they're actually pretty damn savvy with their iPhones, and they use them a lot. And the most discouraging thing that they find is, for example, the Japanese government will have a website to sign up for shots or whatever, and the clunky, horrible interfaces that they tend to set up discourages a lot of them. They go, oh, screw it, I'm just going to go do it. I'll go face to face. Not necessarily that they wanted to. Some of them do, and I'm that way. But, they get discouraged when it's such a difficult interface. So there's some of that going on. But just my comment is they're pretty savvier than I would have thought they'd be.
Well, thank you for saying that, Tim. We believe they are savvier than expected, than a lot of people expect. And in fact, we actually highlight about 7 different users who we interviewed to be with us at the event on October 26th. And they say some amazing things in the interviews. And they are using, especially the iPhone, but also the Alexa and Echo. And there's so many things that I believe people are quite open-minded to and very adept at. And we just have to do a better job, I think, as manufacturers to help people get onboarded so that we can get beyond that 10% actively engaged age tech user.
Well, Maya, it looks like we surpassed 9 a.m.
Yes, indeed. Well, thank you very much indeed. This is already time. It's already time for us to wrap up the room. Dom and Debbie, thank you very much for coming as our speakers today, and Tim for being moderator today. Thank you to everybody who joined us this morning. I hope that you could get valuable insights into age tech and the development of this industry from now on. Once again, I encourage you to register for the conference on October the 26th. And even if you cannot be there on the day, just to watch. I encourage you to watch the recordings of panels. Also, please be informed that Japan Expert Insights is launching a newsletter in November. So if you want to keep informed, you can subscribe to it now. I posted the link in the room chat, so you can do that this later after we finish the room, because all the comments and questions in the room chat remain there. With this, I wish you a great day, and we're looking forward to having you here again next week on Wednesday, when we are going to talk about filmmaking about Japan with another special guest whose name is Michael Foster. So thank you, and have a great day. Thank you for tuning in today. We will be on air next week on Wednesday at 8 a.m. Japan time again, so join us. Until then, you can find us at japanexpertinsights.com and our YouTube channel. If you want to stay informed about our upcoming events, follow us on Clubhouse, LinkedIn or Twitter. Again, we are looking forward to your joining us next week. Until then, stay well and make the best of the day. See you!